Good evening and welcome to the City of Oxnard Planning Commission regular meeting for Thursday, January 19th, 2023. A quick housekeeping item, as shown on the agenda and online, please email all written public comments to planning@oxnard.org. Those wishing to speak during the meeting may do so in person or virtually. For in-person speakers, please submit your speaker card to the Commission Secretary. For virtual speakers, please view the bottom of your screens for the call-in number, meeting ID, and passcode. You may also submit your request to speak by visiting oxnard.org/city-meetings by 3 p.m. the day of the meeting. Because the meeting is electronic, all votes will be done by roll call. And with that, we'll move to our Commission Secretary to establish our quorum.
Chair Chavez,
Here.
Vice Chair Araujo,
Here.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Here.
Commissioner Nash,
Here.
Commissioner Stewart, Commissioner Connolly and Sealsdorf are absent, and we have a quorum.
Thank you for that. Since the roll call has been called, we'll turn to our planning manager to introduce our new commissioner, Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. So I just want to open tonight's meeting by welcoming our new commissioner, Commissioner Stewart. A little bit about Commissioner Stewart. He previously served on the Planning Commission from 2010 to 2018 when he joined the Cultural Arts Commission. He is currently retired, but is active in the community, serving on various commissions, including the Ventura County Civil Service Commission and Community Action of Ventura County Board. He has also been active in the Ventura County NAACP and the MLK Junior Community of Ventura County. He enjoys working on community projects that make the community better. So he has joined the commission, and so we welcome him here and look forward to working with them. And I will hand it over to you if you have anything else to add there.
No, I'm just happy to be involved. You know, I think of all the commissions, I like the planning commission, so I'm just happy to be here.
Well, welcome.
Thank you for that. And with that, we'll move to our next item, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. And Commissioner Stewart, would you mind leading us? Thank you for that. We'll now move to our next item, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding any item not on the agenda, but within the subject matter's jurisdiction of the Commission may do so at this time. However, the Commission cannot take action on any items presented during public comments and will be referred to the Commission Secretary. All public comment speakers will have 3 minutes. And Madam Secretary, just to confirm, we did not have anyone sign up for this item?
That is correct.
Thank you for that. So we'll go ahead and proceed to our agenda, to our consent. Nothing is listed for consent. Our next item is nominations and elections. Commissioners, we've all received the memo on how the process is laid out. As you can see tonight, we're missing 2 commissioners. I would leave it up to the commission if we want to postpone our election to our next meeting, which is going to be February 2nd, or hold the elections this evening. What is the desire of the commission? Commissioner Nash.
I think we can go ahead and hold the elections tonight.
Okay, any other comments? Without objection, we'll go ahead and move forward with the nominations and elections of our chair and vice chair for the calendar year 2023. Process, again, has been laid out that we will receive, the current chair will open the nominations for chair for the 2023. Motion and a second for each nominee. Once there are no further nominees, it will be closed and we will vote in the order that they were received. Upon completion of the chair selection, it will then move on. The new chair will run through the exact same process for vice chair. With that, I'll go ahead and open the nominations for chair for the Planning Commission of 2023. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair. It's my pleasure to nominate Vice Chair Commissioner Arejo to be our next chairperson.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any additional nominations? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the nominations. Since it's a single nomination and we're still following the electronic rules, we'll have a roll call on that nomination.
Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
Commissioner Vice Chair Arrejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Aye.
and Chair Chavez.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you for that, and we'll move chairs afterwards. So with that, I am our vice chair, now our new chair, will go ahead and lead us through the vice chair selection.
Thank you, Past Chair Chavez. Appreciate that. Moving on to Vice Chair. The instructions were read for the chair, and the process will be the same. Are there any nominations for Vice Chair? Commissioner Nash.
Again, it is my pleasure to nominate incoming Commissioner Vincent Stewart to be our vice chair.
Commissioner Stewart was nominated. Is there any second? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Proudly second.
Thank you. There's a second. Are there any other nominations? With no other nominations, I call the nominations closed. Madam Secretary, if we could have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Aye.
Commissioner Vice Chair Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
and Chair Chavez.
Commissioner Chavez.
Commissioner
Aye.
Chavez, sorry.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you, and now we'll go ahead and play musical chairs.
I'd like to note for the record that Chair Arrejo also votes aye. Thank you. The commission will stand at ease as we play musical chairs. Please stand by. Thank you.
Vice Chair-elect, I think your wife will be surprised. You what?
That's exactly, for a while, that's all it is. Thank you.
This chair's low.
Thank you, and the commission will come back to order. We will now move on to section F, ex parte declarations for public hearing items. We'll go through the commissioners and hear their ex parte if they have any. Vice Chair Stewart.
None. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Chavez.
None, thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
None, thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Nash.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Now we will go on to section F, public hearing. The public hearing is for the freeway adjacent digital display billboards ordinance, planning and zoning permit number 20-580-06, zoning text amendment, a request to modify Oxnard City Code Chapter 16 pertaining to the permitting and development requirements related to freeway adjacent digital display billboards, to OCC Chapter 16, Article 2, Section 16-596, Section 16-608, signs in general commercial and industrial zones, Section 16-609, freeway adjacent digital display billboards, and Section 16-610, general restrictions, filed by the City of Oxnard. City staff, Mr. Joe Pearson, II, Planning Environmental Services Manager. Does staff want to provide any summary or additional analysis at this time?
Chair Arejo, the only thing I would like to add is we did receive 4 comment letters related to the items before the commission tonight. So just to briefly summarize the comments, one was from Sunny Bignam, basically asking to not add billboards to the freeway corridor and to basically identifying that They are outdated, unattractive, and a canvas for taggers and graffiti. There's a letter from Aurelio Ocampo, who, again, was opposing adding billboards to the 101 freeway corridor. And a comment from Darren Bada. And again, sorry, this one's actually for the next item. And then a comment letter from the County of Ventura Planning Division. And again, noting or thanking staff for responding to some of the comment letters or comments made on the M&D. And then also identifying that the project area is adjacent to the El Rio, Del Norte, and Island Acres unincorporated communities, and identifying their general plan policy, which talks about considering impacts on residents. And then also identifying visual impacts and recommending increasing the setback, similar, and noting the LA County ordinance. So staff is available to respond to any of those comments should the commission request. And with that, that's all that I have on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. If there's no objection, we'll have the applicant present at this time if there's any. Without objection, yes, Mr. Pearson.
Sorry, Chair Rejo, so this one is a city project, so the applicant for the items I believe G1 and G2 would have a presentation for that one.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. I stand corrected. At this time, members may ask questions of the city commission. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I guess I'll go ahead and get us started here. And some of these questions are just going to be for clarification or information purposes for the public, those who will be watching and those who will follow the item tonight and as the projects develop. But let's see, why is it that this proposed ordinance is needed?
And so Commissioner Lopez, this is coming from negotiations that began with the City Council. So as identified in the staff report, the council expressed an interest in having these electronic billboards. There was a exclusive negotiation agreement with the billboard companies to allow them to explore having these billboards in the city. So this is essentially coming out of a council request.
Okay, and that was included in the presentation, one of the slides 8 that provides the background for the exclusive negotiation agreement outlines that it goes back to June 18, 2019, which was just a very different world and reality and time even, right? Even for the city, I think it might have been pre-measure e-monies that were available. And so if this item for all intents and purposes, say the ordinance itself was not to be approved or supported here tonight, would the city lose anything in this? Meaning, is there any fixed monies that would come into play for canceling this agreement?
I'm happy to address that. The parties that are here tonight, as well as Clear Channel, entered into a exclusive negotiation agreement with the city. There are no financial penalties. It's just an exclusive negotiation agreement. City staff has negotiated with this particular billboard company, and we have that agreement before you tonight. But there are no penalties if, in the end, the City Council chooses not to adopt the ordinance and/or the development agreement.
Great, thank you. And there was a reference to this in the presentation as well, I think during the reference of the timeline, that it was exclusive for X period of time, and then it could be extended for 6 months and again for 6 months, and subsequently. At one point, there was a reference to progress of entitlements that was made, I think when it was speaking to some significant moment in time. And so just for clarification, what was the progress of it that was made on when it came to the topic of entitlements? that were made, and where did that end up for the parties?
So again, Commissioner Lopez, the progress that they were looking at was progress in the entitlements. So submitting of the applications, which are before you today, beginning and going through the CEQA process. So I believe at the time the most recent extension was granted, we had already made it pretty far in the CEQA process. I believe the documents had already been drafted, if not released for public review at that point. So those are the steps that they were looking at in terms of making progress, having submitted the application, continuing to work with staff, again, going through the environmental process, and then ultimately coming before the commission tonight.
Thank you. And the last question that I have for this first round is, and again, just for clarification purposes and for the public, can you clarify if the city is selling the land, or, because I know there was reference to the zoning aspect of it, but in this case, there's the exclusive, negotiation agreement. So just to clarify for the public, what does that capture or entail?
So Commissioner Lopez, so no, the city is not intending to sell the property. The city would maintain ownership of the property, and then there would be essentially a lease to the sign companies, and can add some additional information if necessary.
Yes, Mr. Pearson explained it well. It's the document, which is not before you for this item, but for the next two items, is a development agreement and lease of property. So it provides both the lease of property for a 30-year term, as well as a statutory development agreement to provide vested rights to them and to lay out very clearly what the rights, duties, and obligations are of the parties.
Great, thank you so much for that.
Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Pearson, just, again, this is just more clarifying questions, more than anything. The distance that we are placing, or that is being proposed between each billboard, who set those limits? Was that something that the council said they wanted an X number distance, or was that staff recommendation and there was no objection to that by council?
So Commissioner Chavez, gonna take some getting used to that. The 2,000 square feet or 2,000 foot separation did come from working with staff and the applicants. I believe the state regulations require 1,000 foot separation. However, as we were looking at how many of these we would want in the city and how we would want them separated, 2,000 feet was what we ultimately landed on.
Now, are these monarchies or are they actual billboards that are just digitalized? Monarchies in the sense that we see at River Park, the collection, it has the digital board, but then it also has the stores listed, or are we looking at the regular billboards, but they're just digital?
So this would be, similar to the regular billboard, just digital. So there would be no other like advertisements attached to these signs. These are just the billboards themselves.
Now, I don't know, maybe I missed it, but in our region, how many communities along their major freeway have these digital billboards?
In terms of the digital billboards, I believe at this time, if we're looking kind of the Camarillo, Oxnard, Ventura is the only other jurisdiction with the similar like freeway billboard. Oxnard does have two other similar types of billboards over at the Auto Center and then the sign at the collection. However, those are specific to those properties and only advertise those businesses that operate there, as opposed to these are, again, billboards which would advertise like off-site businesses.
Regionally, are there any other, like Santa Barbara or LA County, that have those digital boards along their freeways?
So if we're looking further down LA County, yes, they would have those type of digital display billboards. But then looking north at this time, I'm not aware of any moving up towards like Santa Barbara or Goleta areas.
Okay. I know we received a letter or a comment submission from the CHP, Captain Permesiro. I probably said that name wrong. I like to butcher names by coincidence. He had referenced safety concerns. What is the city's response to those safety concerns? They said that there was going to increase traffic congestion, increase potential traffic collisions, and that the 101 is already a congested freeway through Ventura County, that this is only going to create additional problems.
I'm trying to pull up that letter right now.
Well, Mr. Pearson is looking at the particular letter. Generally, in reviewing the letter, he made specific statements without any backing or basis for that. He said billboards will create these issues. He didn't explain why. He provided no data. It was just his opinion on that fact. I did not see any evidence, any citation of studies, any basis for that, be it in Ventura County, LA County, or other counties. So that's the city found that it would have less than a significant impact. And Mr. Pearson, if you can go ahead with that now.
Yes, Commissioner Chavez, and I also do want to note that we do have Michael Houlihan, and sorry if I mispronounced your name, here with us. He was the CEQA consultant on this project, so he and his team worked on preparing the environmental documents before you today. And we also do have the senior biologist from ESA as well on the video call. But in response to your question regarding safety concerns on the freeway, the one requirement for all of these signs is that they do have to comply with the Caltrans requirements. And so if you noticed in the actual ordinance itself, there are restrictions on like the flashing and the frequency which they can turn over. So all of those are standards as well as other requirements in both the state regulations that place restrictions on these signs to ensure that they don't create a traffic hazard. So city staff feels that as long as they are complying with that, which is a requirement of the ordinance, that there would not be a significant impact on traffic safety.
Okay. And again, maybe I missed it, but did we get any input from Caltrans? I know we were following those rules. I did see, it had to be 8 seconds for each slide before it's allowed to change the flicking lights, but did we get any feedback from Caltrans?
No, we did receive a comment letter from Caltrans. Michael, do you remember which letter that was? And from what I recall, the letter was essentially just identifying that the signs had to comply with the Caltrans requirements. So again, they didn't raise any specific issues with any of the signs that were being proposed or the ordinance being proposed, so long as, again, they did comply with the regulations and that they did receive the permit, which they would need to go through Caltrans to obtain.
Now, this might be going off topic, or maybe it's within the topic, but when individuals or businesses try to advertise on those digital boards, who do they go to one, be able to place their ad on those boards, and where does the revenue stream end up? Does it come to the city? Does it go to the ones that we have the agreements with? What happens with that?
Yes, happy to discuss that. As I indicated earlier, this is proposed to be a development agreement and a lease. So if the city council adopts the ordinance, which is before you right now, as well as approves the development agreements, then OFI would have the ability to construct those billboards. They would be the owner of it during that lease term. They would collect all the revenue and would pay the annual rental fee and or percentage of income earned, but they handle everything relating to that. The city would not have any say in that process other than the ability to audit books to make sure that the proper amounts have been paid.
Now, say for instance, an ad gets placed that goes against the values or the goals of the city council. Can the city take any action against the advertiser?
As part of our negotiations, there were specific limits on certain types of advertising that would not be included. This is something which OFI has voluntarily agreed to. We can go into that further when we get to the development agreements, but that was negotiated between the parties, so we have the right to do that. It's not censorship per se, because this is an agreement between two parties, in this case, the property owner, which is the city, and the billboard operator, assuming that the council approves the development agreements.
And I want to make it clear to everybody, I'm not looking for censorship. I just want to make sure that any ads that are displayed that's on city properties is one that's in line with our community's values and, direction. So thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. Are there any other members who would like to question, or Chavez, sorry.
Okay. I don't really have any questions. I'm just kind of reflecting back. I was on this commission when we did the original signs for the collection. And some of these same comments about traffic and hazards and all those came up. And yet, over the time, I don't recall anything that's really happened there. We talk about stuff on the signage and not, again, to censor anything, but I know that like with the gun shows, those were taken off because there was a cry from the public that was something they didn't want. So I'm assuming that in the same spirit that I guess it'll work that way. But I do have a question, and that is that, we have things like the Strawberry Festival and other big events. Is there any public service announcement type of in that agreement? I don't recall seeing that, but I guess that's something I'm wondering about.
It would be most appropriate to discuss that when we get to that item on the agenda. Right now, the focus is on the actual ordinance, and we'll be happy to dive into the details of the development agreements when we get to those two items.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yes, Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Arrejo. So I'd like to backtrack a little bit and get back to the letter from the CHP. Would you agree, though, that that individual offers expert testimony on the hazards presented by digital signs and the need for more responses from CHP? It seems to me he is an expert. He's an expert in that field. So I just want to clarify that the comments made from Mr. Rozelle.
So I guess in regards to the comment from the CHP, as we go through the analysis in terms of the impacts on the freeway associated with these signs, we would defer generally to the Caltrans, as they are the regulating agency for the freeway. And so they do have, again, standards related to allowing these signs along the freeway to ensure that they actually do not have that adverse impact on traffic. And so they do have a permitting process, which all freeway signs would need to go through. So any sign permitted under this ordinance would be required to get a permit from Caltrans. And that is one of their responsibilities, is to ensure that, again, these signs create a safety hazard.
The Planning Commission is free to defer to the testimony of the CHP, though, if we so choose.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this zoning text amendment, if I'm hearing it correctly, was generated by a decision made at the city council level. So staff took it upon themselves, under the direction of the city council, to develop the initial study, mitigate a negative deck.
Yes, that is correct.
And did the city also foot the cost of developing the MND?
So as this is the city's project, the city was responsible for the the ordinance amendment as well as the environmental document.
This the zoning text amendment is separate from the development agreements of the other two agenda items. So this isn't the appropriate time to talk about the development agreement.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. If the planning commission decides to deny this proposal, are we still going to hear the other two agenda items, or is it a moot point at that time?
So the planning commission decision on the ordinance is a recommendation to city council. So the commission's recommendation, if it were to recommend denial to the city council, the other items could still be heard, but ultimately it would go to city council.
If I can add to that, staff would request that regardless of the decision made on this item, that you go forward and make a recommendation regarding the next two items, because under state law, development agreements have to go before the planning commission for consideration for their recommendation. So we would appreciate going forward with that process, so that the council will have the ability to hear these items and make the final determination on them.
The whatever decision we make has to be based on the required findings, whether we agree or disagree with them.
I'll start first, and then Mr. Pearson. This is a zone text amendment, so you are not required to make findings as it relates to general plan and zoning changes. There are, however, the mitigated net deck, so there's findings associated with that particular environmental document.
I found it, curious that throughout the zoning text amendment, well, throughout the MND, I should say, I came across this phrase repeatedly, and I quote, "Because specific electronic billboard projects throughout the program area are not known at this time, project level environmental effects cannot be assessed." And this is, several of the comment letters asked that we look at the cumulative impacts in deciding, whether we agree with the MND or not. So how do we jump that hurdle that, well, there will be cumulative impacts, but we can't talk about them? It just seems like a crazy bit of logic, a crazy bit of logical thinking, because I think the planning commission wants to look at the cumulative impact, but we're being told, well, no, you can't.
So Commissioner Nash, whenever we're doing an ordinance amendment, especially one that is ultimately going to be citywide, it is obviously going to be difficult to try to identify each location. So these signs are allowed along that freeway corridor. And at this point in time, we don't know all the locations that the sign would be, or these signs would be placed. And so each sign location would potentially have its own unique set of impacts associated with it. So at this point in time, to be able to determine what each of those project level impacts would be, wouldn't be feasible at this point in time. So as we look at it, we generally look at, if we allowed signs along this corridor, would that be an impact? And we also looked at our general plan policies as well to ensure that each sign is in conformance with those policies, and we do that project-specific level impact analysis, that there wouldn't be an impact overall with the build-out of this program.
I found it very confusing when trying to determine the overall height of the digital signs, because there were so many starting points, that whether it should be at the level of the freeway lane, to the, in effect, to the bottom of the digital sign. It seemed like a crazy way to analyze the height of the digital sign, which I think for any person with common sense would be from the base to the very top. Why was there such difficulty in telling us what the exact height of each sign would be based on, from the base to the top?
So Commissioner Nash, because the freeway height changes depending on where the sign is, that's why the sign height was based on the freeway level. So in instances where the freeway is above the adjacent roadway area, as we'll see in one of the signs this evening, that way if you're on the freeway, the height of the sign will actually be consistent as opposed to...
And my point being that's just a crazy way to look at it, in my opinion. It should be from the base of the sign to the top of the sign, and ignore the freeway. Just my opinion. In talking about a substantial public benefit, how do we define that? I mean, I would define that in terms of well, what is the public benefit? Is it strictly money from the rent?
So the public benefit is something that would ultimately be determined by the city council. So it is up to the city council as part of the development agreements to determine what is a acceptable level of public benefit being provided. And one of those options would be a monetary payment to the city. But again, ultimately that would be the city council's determination as part of the individual development agreements.
And yet the planning commission is asked to look at the public benefit.
If I could also add, it's not just the money, which is the benefit, as you know, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the development agreements. There's also, the city will also get free advertising for community events. So there's also a chance to advertise the city of Oxnard to people passing through our city on the freeway, for public events, for other things as well. So it's not just money, it's also the public service announcements. If there's emergencies, other things, we have the ability to utilize their facilities. So it's, yes, money is an important component of the public benefit, but there are things beyond mere dollars and cents.
Commissioner Stewart referenced the original digital sign, and I was on the planning commission also for that. So we do have some institutional knowledge about that. But that first sign was specific to the collection. The signs that would be approved under the zoning text amendment are not specific to the collection. There's general billboards that can advertise anything.
Commissioner Nash, yes, that is correct. These would not be the collection sign as well as the auto center sign are both specific to those developments. And so those, again, would only advertise businesses which are on those properties. These would be general advertising signs.
And the signs, the digital signs that are allowed under the zoning text amendment are two-sided. Yeah. So, to me, in effect, you're creating 10 additional billboards. I'll call them billboards because that's what they are. It's almost insulting not to call them billboards because they're going to be governed by the bill. They're going to be regulated by the billboard industry and all of that other stuff that goes with billboards. So I just want to make that clear to the planning commission that these aren't part of the collection and will not benefit the collection, and they are. As far as I can tell, they will all be two-sided. So I just want to make that clear.
Mr. Chair requests.
I think that ends my questions for right now. Thank you.
Would you like to continue?
I just wanted to request information that maybe it would be appropriate to maybe take our items out of order. because I feel like we want to dive deep into what the agreements were, and possibly will determine if the ordinance should pass. Am I right to assume that we could do that?
Unfortunately not, because the only way that you could recommend approval of the development agreement and SUP is if you were also recommending approval of the zoning, because without the zone text amendment, there can be no billboards, there could be no special use permits for those billboards, because it would not be an allowed use. So, unfortunately, this is the order that it would need to go through to allow you to consider the two development agreements, which are coming down further on the agenda.
I understand. I just feel like we're trying to touch on multiple items, and we keep getting roadblocked because we can't speak on them yet because we haven't reached those items yet. Thank you, Chair.
Certainly, Commissioner Chavez. A follow-up on that point, not to end what, if you have any further questions, Commissioner Nash. Mr. Rozelle, in regards to Commissioner Chavez's comments, could we not still, if we wanted, after we close the public hearing, to move to table or lay this item on the table, take up the other items, and if nothing happens still with this agenda items, those items will just stay on the side until and if an ordinance is passed by this planning commission?
If I can understand what you're saying for the planning commission to do the discussions up to the point that they're ready to table this, and then discuss the two development agreements without making a decision, then come back to the zoning? Is that what is being proposed? I want to make sure I'm clear.
That's correct, as an option.
As long as there is no final action taken on the two development agreements, yes, because as I mentioned, you cannot recommend approval of them without having taken action on the underlying proposed zone text amendment that is before you at this moment in time.
Thank you, Mr. Rozelle. To the commission, we will, at this time, if there's no objection, still continue on with questions and go through the public hearing. If there's any public comments, close, and I'll make a further explanation if it's still so desired in regards to our options, since it looks like at least one of our members would like that option. Thank you. Commissioner Nash, did you have any questions? Further questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. I had a couple. I do read the public comment letters, obviously through the process, and the ones that came up in the past couple days, in particular with the County of Ventura. I am concerned because they obviously read through the ordinance and the other development agreements and followed up, reiterating multiple points I'd like to point out in regards to increasing the buffer with residential zones from 100 to 200, a time shutoff at 10 p.m. So I'll specifically reference those, and I'd just like on the record why the city of Oxnard feels that that what we have right now is sufficient, and I guess not to a more restrictive standard that would appear on the face to it being more beneficial, at least as how the County of Ventura says, for the residents. And they were specifically referencing their the neighborhoods not specifically under the city of Oxnard. Thank you.
So Chair, yes, staff did receive and review the county's letter. The county did make a reference to extending or increasing the residential buffer from 100 to 200 feet. The city of Oxnard has continued with the 100-foot buffer. We did look at the lighting impacts as part of the environmental analysis. So there were lighting studies done looking at what the potential impacts would be on the residential properties, and found that at 100 feet, there would not be an impact to the residential properties. I believe the increase in foot candles would be, if it was 0.5 or greater, there would be a potential impact. As we've worked through the signs at the 100 feet, they all are well below that at that 100-foot setback. So based on the fact that there would not be an environmental impact associated with the 100-foot setback rule, that was one of the reasons why the city continued with the 100-foot setback. The other issue is, again, they referenced the Los Angeles County setback. Here in the city of Oxnard, as you look at different areas and how we've allowed development in the area adjacent to the freeways, we do have a lot of residential in close proximity to the freeway. So as we looked at increasing that setback, it would very much eliminate many of the areas in which these signs would be potentially allowed. And then as the county also referenced other neighborhoods, again, outside of the city, these two signs would not impact those two or the two currently before us, but each project would be required to conduct a site-specific environmental analysis. So again, if it were going to be in one of those neighborhoods, there would be a environmental report prepared, which would ultimately have to come before the commission. And again, those signs would be subject to any appropriate conditions at that point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Are there any other further questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just real quick, Mr. Pearson, the distance from that a billboard is allowed to be from a residential is how many feet?
So right now it's 100 feet from the edge of the pole or sign face, whichever is closer to the property line of the residential property.
Okay, so the pole or the digital sign itself from the edge to the residential. So when we are placing these billboards up, obviously they can't be hanging over the freeway, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so they're all over. And we've already checked all the distances from where the proposed ones to the residential areas?
So yes, for the signs coming up, they all meet the standards identified in the current draft ordinance.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Chair?
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. I would just like to have your comment from the County of Ventura comment letter. It was stated that the El Rio area goals and policies plan was not addressed. And I read, I read the explanation, but I'm a little disturbed that we can be so cavalier about, we don't need to. That's just not really an acceptable answer to me. Do you have any further comment on that?
Again, Commissioner Nash, the sign ordinance before you currently does not identify any specific sites. So as we would, if we did receive a proposal for a sign in those communities, we would at that point look at those, the impact of the signs on those communities, and that would involve coordinating with the county if necessary to make sure that any of those impacts were addressed. But again, the ordinance itself does not allow for, or does not currently place a sign in that community, and there may not actually ever be a sign in those communities based on just the ordinance itself. And again, if a specific one did come or was requested, it would require the special use permit, it would require the development agreement, and again, that would come before the Planning Commission and City Council. So again, those impacts are not being ignored. We'd be looking at those with the individual projects that would be actually impacting those neighborhoods.
And yet, G2 will absolutely impact the El Rio neighborhood. So we're not there yet, and I acknowledge that, but, you know, my comment about not addressing the El Rio area plan and policy will be applicable when we get to G2. So it's a little frustrating that we're not we're not looking at this holistically, I guess you could say. And not a question, just kind of an opinion, and I apologize for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Any other questions from the commission?
I'm sorry, Chair.
Okay.
Commissioner Nash sparked 2 more questions in me.
I'll allow you this flexibility. Yes.
Because we have an exclusive agreement with 2 vendors, how do we know who gets which property? That's question number 1, or the rights to build the billboards. And then question number 2, of the 5 that we're saying are allowed in the city, do 2 of those include what's already up as far as the auto center and the river park, or the collection, sorry?
So with regards to, I guess, your last question first, no, it does not include the auto center signs or the collection sign. These are separate signs under separate regulations. As previously mentioned, those are on-site advertising signs, so they are limited to advertising on-site businesses. These are like the separate signs under separate regulations. In regards to who gets what signs, these 2 signs are both being presented by Foster Interstate, or Outfront Foster Interstate. So these are both the same sign companies. The other locations, should they move forward, again, the ordinance allows for up to 5, but it does not require us to build 5. It just allows for that flexibility to allow up to 5. The other signs would be other companies, or it could be the same company. But these 2 are both being proposed by the same company.
Who selected the number 5?
So that was essentially the city. Came
Staff,
up-
not
yeah,
the council.
Yes.
Thank you.
To
Sorry.
reference, there was 4 that the council at one point was considering. But again, there wasn't a set number set by the council.
So essentially, within a 4-mile stretch along the 101, we could have 7 digital boards, including the 2 that are already on site for those merchants, correct?
Yes, if this ordinance was approved.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the leverage, Chair.
Yes, certainly, Commissioner Chavez. Any last questions? With no further questions from the commission, Madam Secretary, I believe there's 1 public comment here, and it's looking like 1 public comment online. Is that correct?
We do have 1 person that signed up, but we have 2 new attendees, so I'm not sure if we'll have a second speaker there. But we do have somebody raising their hand, and that's the person that signed up.
Okay. So
It
there is,
would be Mr. Darren Vida.
okay. Thank you. Let's unmute him. Hello, you have 3 minutes. Please begin.
Thank you. My name is Darren Beta. I appreciate the chance to talk here today. I am a resident of River Park, north of the freeway, and am directly impacted by these potential signs. The proposed ordinance amendment draws an arbitrary distinction between existing signs and future signs. They are the same signs, just with different text and pictures being displayed. One of them being proposed, and I bring this up because it affects the spacing in the ordinance, would bring it within 1,000 feet of the next closest sign, the bare minimum of the, I believe it's the highway regulation. That would mean you are crossing a sign every 12 seconds in that case. And it's been previously mentioned that there are 2 signs in Oxnard. There are indeed 3 signs in Oxnard. There's one auto center north of the freeway, then there is the collection sign, then there is the tremendously massive, very bright and distracting sign south of the freeway at the other auto dealerships. As was mentioned, they're double-sided, and so it's really kind of double that. So the previous assessed counts are quite a bit larger. As noted earlier, the calls for substantial public benefit. I'd like to argue that destruction of trees that serve as a pleasant surrounding and noise barrier to the freeway to place a, frankly, very ugly sign is not in the substantial public benefit, even if there is tax benefit to the city or the occasional marketing opportunity. As noted earlier, taking this holistically, the responses from the city were often referring to the mitigating negative declarations in their response. I think that's grounds enough to consider this as a whole in there. Also, the city notes in response that there is less than significant impact in many cases with no substantiating explanation or evidence. And the CHP and County Ventura presented excellent points of why these additional mitigations should be in place, and they were met with no substantiating response. I'd also like to note that the early response from residents was not recorded in your packages, at least online there. Myself and others brought up, I believe, excellent points, that specifically different locations in which there could be distractions to drivers and request additional renderings. There was no response from the city. So I believe this should be made available to the commission. Finally, I don't believe this ordinance is good for Oxnard. If it was, we'd put it to a vote to the city and let the people decide. I don't think, I don't think anyone in their right mind would want a sign 100 feet from their property and consider that a substantial public benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary, are there any other public commenters in person or online?
I don't see anybody raising their hand, and I don't have any additional speakers.
Okay, thank you, Madam Secretary. At this time, I'll close the hearing to public comment. At this time, I will address Commissioner Chavez's parliamentary inquiry in regards to the possibility of going to the second and items F2 and F3 before deciding or deliberating on F1. Before I make an opinion, I'd like to ask Mr. Roselle, can you confirm that we can process agendas items F2 and F3? We could approve or deny them and then go back to agenda item F1, or we can't do anything with F2 and F3 and we have to do something with F1?
As far as taking a final action, you would need to take a final action on F1 before you could take a final action on F2 or F3. As I mentioned earlier, F2 and F3 proposes billboards, which currently are not allowed under our regulations, so you have to take an action on the zone text amendment before you take a final action on F2 and F3. There's no issue with, as was proposed, to table F1. So basically, you're in essence keeping the process open to allow discussion, a more holistic discussion, as someone indicated, on F2 and F3, and then take whatever information you have with staff presentation, the applicant's presentation, public comments, level of deliberation, but then going back to the zone text amendment F1 before you take an action on F2 and F3.
Understood. Thank you, Ms. Roselle. The opinion of the chair is that we could lay agenda item F1 on the table, assuming that when we go through F2 and F3, that we do not go to a final motion to approve or deny them with or without amendments. I'll leave it back to the person who officially made or originally made the parliamentary inquiry, and then we'll go to the commission before we go into deliberations, if any. Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. I'm okay with going ahead and moving forward with this item if there's no objection from my colleagues on the commission. Um, I can tell you right now that I will be proposing some amendments to this ordinance in order to benefit the community and the majority of the comments that were made from the commissioners. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. We'll now move on to deliberation. Commission. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I'll go ahead and get us started again. I think I share a little bit in the frustration in which the agenda was, I think, agreed upon or organized for tonight's meeting, because items, G2 and G3 are, contingent upon G1, and so it's like we're being forced a bit to have this decision on this proposed ordinance, but wanna, I think as Commissioner Chavez mentioned, really dive down a little bit into the weeds of it. And so just for the future, I think I would like to maybe schedule them separately on different days, different meetings, just so it's easier for us to give each one, if you will, the attention and the deliberation that it requires and deserves. That being said, I think I alluded this in my questions where I recognize that this was brought forth to the council and the mayor in June 18 of 2019, and quite actually it predated that, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, when this current city manager arrived, the city was under very different financial realities, and I think at the time I was, like many people, in supportive of exploring alternative sources of funding and revenue for the city where everything was on the table. And this was one of those things that the city manager brought, maybe that he was familiar with from his time in the Bay Area or in San Bernardino, where you see more of these billboards. I think about these billboards in Los Angeles County, which was referenced by staff, and they're quite, I'll say, prominent along industrial routes, the 710 freeway, the 60, the 10, communities that neighbor, if you will, those thoroughfares. Here we only have the 101. But as I mentioned, I think at the time when this was brought forth just as a topic of discussion for folks, it was rooted in looking at it or examining it as an alternative source of funding for the city. Since then, Measure E has passed. The voters have approved that additional tax that has just changed our financial reality for the city. We're no longer looking at putting away fire trucks or shutting down the library and all those other things that we had to kind of live through. And that was again 2019 and predating 2019. Not to mention the pandemic and all that it's done. And I just say all that to say that our reality today, financial and otherwise, is just so different than what it was in 2019 and before. And so I think that for me, I'm just trying to reconcile the urgency, the priority, or even the need of these billboards at this time. Again, my outlook or my opinions would have probably been different in 2019, but it just seems that there is more of a movement towards preservation and preserving landscapes, natural landscapes, and this just seems a little counter to that for me. There's a disconnect, and so for me, I'm just having trouble reconciling and heading in that direction. I mean, we look at other communities in Ventura County, and this is one where I think as one person, one voter, one resident, I would stand back and say, let Camarillo have them. Let Thousand Oaks have them. Let someone other community, seek the revenue if they want in this one. This is one where I'm okay not being the first or the first in line for just these types or these many potential large billboards in the city. I think I also heed the public comment that we've received, both in person today, remotely, and what, as a commissioner, I've received prior to the meeting that was shared with all of us. And when I see that the county is not necessarily in support of it for their host of reasons and interest, if you will, and at least from a CHP perspective, that's a state agency. So having the county not really be in support or sign off on it, and not having the state, if you will, through the CHP and their concerns, is just one that, again, as one voter and as one resident and as one commissioner, I'm just not seeing us there, and just kind of counter to where I think we as a society are moving to. And again, with centering preservation, if you will. You look at just driving down the 101 into the San Gabriel Valley and San Fernando Valley and into LA. Beautiful, hills in the background, if you will, around Calabasas, Agoura Hills and whatnot, right? And so for us, we may just be looking at it in terms of a single leased billboard, but it really does potentially change the landscape that people would see looking towards the coast. Looking at the iconic, if you will, towers that we have at the Esplanade and Vineyard. And if you're looking towards the direction of Ventura, kind of like the same thing, right? Like it would just change, if you will, it would alter. And I just can't say that I'm that excited about it. And so, I'm just inclined to not support this item. And like I said, I think that I would feel very differently if we were still living in 2019 or 2018 or 2017, again, when the city was having to make very difficult decisions for its services and programming to its residents. But that's just not the reality now. And so I don't know if reality just changed in the process of pushing this item through to us. But those are all my comments at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez, for your comments. As I was sitting here trying to think about how do I talk on this particular item without making it sound like it's going into the other two items, because we want to stay focused on the ordinance. I have some huge concerns with this ordinance, as I already mentioned, I will be making some recommendations to amendments. Reason being is that within a 4-mile stretch of the 101, and this is kind of in line with Commissioner Dr. Lopez was saying, I'm okay with saying another city can go ahead and have these boards. In 2019 to now, our city has changed financially compared to what it was. What it was before was an urge to find any source of revenue streams. Now, we're not in that place anymore. So it's hard to try to sell the public or sell a commissioner that we need this, that there's a benefit for these boards. In terms of some of the comment letters and even the public comments this evening, even though there is a reduced illuminating light from these boards around the residential area, it's still a light, it's still a transitional. Every 8 seconds, it's transitioning. I kind of want to talk about something else, but that jumps into the next item, so I got to watch myself. There are concerns with the recommended distances between the billboards, between the billboard and the residential, between the billboard and non-residential, the height. Those are the concerning factors for me, because where we are potentially looking at having these, they're relatively close to residential, and the perfect example is near the, I'll just stop those comments, because again, it's jumping into the next one. I asked the question as to us not taking this item first and moving on to the others because of the fact I feel our hands are tied and we're being forced to make a decision and then make a decision on others. It kind of feels again like the River Park specific plan where we had to make an amendment just so that we could have housing projects come before us that same night. This is what I feel is happening again. So I would agree with Commissioner Dr. Lopez that when we get things like this that is a domino effect, that we have them on different nights. Because I rather focus on this and make a decision on this specifically before feeling that my hands are tied behind my back and I can't see or speak on the other items until I make a decision on this one. Those would be my comments at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. Vice Chair Stewart.
Yes, I have some questions. So if we were to say no to this, this is just a recommendation, correct? So it would still go on to the city council and they could reverse that.
That is correct.
If we were to not make a decision tonight, but ask that this be brought back, dates, time certain, could that happen? And would that prevent anything else happening until some of the questions and concerns that we have could be answered?
Staff would request that the commission take an action tonight, either in support or opposing. If there are specific issues, clearly those are appropriate to be raised. And Commissioner Nass has raised some issues. Commissioner Dr. Lopez has raised issues. This is appropriate. The comments of the commission will be presented to the city council in the staff report. And once the commission takes an action, then the council will weigh all those factors and make the determination regarding the proposed zone text amendment as well as the two development agreements.
So there is no way to, I don't want to say delay this, but to allow some things to be worked out. So it has to be tonight.
Well, it is staff's recommendation that you take action tonight. Clearly, it is up to the planning commission if you choose to continue this item. But at the same time, staff has prepared with our consultant, the environmental impact reports. We provided response to comments. We've the planning manager, Mr. Pearson, has provided additional responses to the county's response to comments. So we've gone back and forth. So in many ways, we believe that we have, staff believes we have responded appropriately to all the issues that are raised. So it is unclear and it's unlikely, in my personal opinion, that additional time would make any substantial differences. Clearly, the county wants more than 100 feet between the billboards and the residential properties. They want 200 feet. And, you know, those are as an example, two different public entities seeking kind of different levels of zoning and setbacks. So, you know, our environmental review, which of course has not been certified yet, you know, has found that would have less than a significant impact. So that's my comments now, but happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Okay. Another question. So let's say we approve this, but we want to amend it to show from the residents instead of 100 feet, it's 200 feet. Does that make a big problem for F2 and F3 then?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
But once again, we are not preventing, and of course the commission is not prevented from making their recommendations as it relates to both the zone text amendment as well as the development agreement, SUPs, et cetera. That is well within your purview, and staff would not propose or attempt to say you cannot do that. That is absolutely your right to make recommendations for changes to this ordinance before it goes to the council.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stewart. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Rehill. So two things right off the bat, and Commissioner Dr. Lopez nailed this on the head. We are in a completely different fiscal situation than when the city council directed staff to come back with a zoning text amendment. The second point is also a completely, pretty much, different city council. So I think that whatever we do here, if it gets appealed and goes before the city council, they may very well say, yes, we made that decision under the extenuating circumstances that were present at that time, but things are different now, so we don't need this. I honestly believe that. I also, did my own general plan analysis, and I came up with any number of policies that do not support this. And I could go over them. In the interest of saving time, I won't. I'll talk about some other things, but I could certainly talk about the policies that I found that do not support the zoning text amendment. I keep coming back to the letter from the CHP, which reads in part, the magnitude of the project may place a greater strain on limited public safety resources with an expected increase in vehicle traffic on US 101. A potential delay of emergency response due to extended response times places the public at risk. The potential increase in traffic may cause an increase in motor services, crashes, and injuries to motorists. And, I find it interesting that on the one hand, we ask drivers to put away their digital devices, to not drive distracted, do not pay attention to text messages or anything else. And yet, here we're proposing putting up giant text messages that will distract drivers. This is this section of the 101, it has an S-curve. It has lanes forming and merging and disappearing. It takes a driver's full attention to navigate this safely. And I can speak from personal experience. My daughter had two, she rear-ended cars twice, merging from the Vineyard on-ramp onto the 101. And my wife also had an accident. So, my daughter's not such a great driver, but my wife is. Things happen. And I'm just very concerned that this section of freeway does not need any further distractions. The So, the CHP recognizes the unmitigable nature of this congested, twisting, merging, lane diminishing stretch of the 101 freeway, and I agree with that. The analysis that was presented in the MND, I just find so many things wrong with it, based on my own knowledge and personal experience, that it just seems like a flawed analysis and therefore a flawed document. The public benefit aspect, to me, it's well, we'll give you a little bit of rent money if you allow us to degrade your quality of life substantially. I absolutely believe that this section of the 101 offers scenic corridors, view sheds, and scenic resources that will be greatly diminished by having multiple billboards up. And again, I'm, trespassing into G2 and G3, and I apologize for that. But, my brain forces me to look at the cumulative impacts. So I just can't support this. I have no problem throwing it back to the city council because I'm pretty sure I know what their reaction will be. So those are my comments, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Are there any other comments from the commission? I'll make a couple of my own at this point. I am concerned, like I said, in my questions, and I'll follow up on that again. In general, I do think that the 100-foot distance to the residential is quite small. When you look at the map, when you look at the bigger county, LA, when you look at other cities, it's probably a good reason that we don't follow the minimum 100-foot that's in our various policies that we have to follow on the state level. Having the lights, very bright at night in the early morning, if this motion even goes forward to the commission for approval, I'd have to at least be amending for sure in regards to increasing the foot distance to the nearest residence and having a time shut off somewhere between the 10 p.m. and midnight. It appears even that I don't even think an approval will come before this commission based on the initial comments of my fellow commissioners. So I'll leave my comments there at this time. Are there any secondary comments from the commission? Commissioner Chavez.
If there's no further comments, Chair, I'll put forth a motion.
Without objection.
So I'll move staff's recommendation with the following amendments. Amendment number 1 will be on freeway adjacent display billboards. So I'm reading off of page 4 of 6 on the ordinance pages. So that the digital billboards can only be erected on city-owned property or right-of-way in a non-residential zone located and amending the 400 to 500 feet, reducing the number of signs from 5 down to 3, distance between the digital billboards and residential properties increased from 100 to 250. Increase the separation between each billboard, not every other billboard, but between each billboard from 2,000 feet to 2,500 feet. Increasing the time switching between each digital display from 8 seconds to 12 seconds. And those will be my amendments to the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner, at this time, I'm gonna ask if there's no objection from you before a second is made. Are you moving the adoption of the resolution with the amendments as stated by you?
That's correct.
Thanks. It has been moved by Commissioner Chavez to adopt Resolution 2023 XX, recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration 22-01 and adopt Resolution 2023 XX, recommending that the City Council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-580-06 with the following amendments: to increase the distance of any non-residential zones located from 400 to 500 feet, to decrease that no more than 5 to 3 are allowed within the city, that the distance that a digital display billboard may be placed at a distance of less than 100 to 250 feet, that each billboard, instead of shall be separated from every other, that it should be separated from every billboard by at least 2,000 feet, amended to 2,500 feet, and that a freeway adjacent digital display billboard may show a series of still images, each displayed for at least 8 seconds, increased to 12 seconds. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Vice Chair. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any deliberation on the amended motion? Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. Just some quick comments. I didn't want to outright say that we shouldn't have the billboards. Do I agree that we should have them? No. But the fact that there is an ordinance and that the City Council did propose this recommendation back in 2019. But I do want to be mindful of our residents, especially those that are living along the freeway. We have the River Park, we have the Wagon Wheel area. These are areas of concern. Some of the language, as was already displayed, is changed in order to reflect some of the concerns from the letters as well as from the comments from the commission. I believe this is a decent compromise. I won't even say that it's a good, I'll say it's a decent compromise in order to still continue to meet what the City Council recommended back in 2019 and what staff is recommending, but at a more conservative approach that doesn't have a negative impact on our residents. And I urge for a support on this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. Commissioner Nash. Oh, yeah, there. Okay. None. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I think just general comments, right? Deliberation right now? Deliberation on.
Correct, Commissioner Dr. Lopez, deliberation on the amended motion before us.
I think although I appreciate Commissioner Chavez's, intentions on, being more conservative with the number of signs and the distances, with the changes from 100 to 250 and some of the other motions proposed, to alleviate some of the public's concerns, I still just strongly, I think, oppose just this ordinance or proposed ordinance in general. And I'll just kind of go back to what I've said before, really seeing this role, one where we, are stewards of the public's land, of the, of our built environment, and if you will, preserving it as much as unnecessarily altered as we can for the next generation. And again, I said it earlier that if our financial reality was different, I would perhaps feel different myself. And that's, again, just looking at the difficult decisions that the city leadership, that the City Council had to confront at that time, and that just not being our reality now. And so, although I very much appreciate, the suggested amendments, it's one where I just personally would not even want to open that Pandora's box for folks. And again, just kind of looking at what Commissioner Nash said earlier about the aesthetics, the natural built environment and landscape, and how it would alter it. I've done this drive, I don't even have to. I'll go back to a time where I was driving 101 south, and again, just taken aback by the vast open beauty of the skies of our iconic, small towers, and again, just seeing how that would be altered. And you just have to look at the sign in Ventura. It it alters just the visibility of what is the open, just our land. And so as a steward of the public's trust, of the public's land and its recommendations on its built environment, I just still strongly, even with the proposed amendments, just am not prepared to support this myself.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Any other comments? Commissioner Nash.
Thank you. I am opposed to this zone text amendment and the MND because I just think its time has come and passed. And I think we should allow it to die a quick and quiet death. When I looked at some of the visual representations, I kind of had to laugh that they chose streaming services. Like what one was Hulu. And I know it was just a mock-up, but it's like, well, is that really what we want to our guests, to our city, to see an advertisement for a streaming service? This location, this stretch of the 101 is absolutely a gateway and an entryway to the city of Oxnard, and we should be very cognizant of that fact, and we should be very respectful of that fact, and we shouldn't just, give it over to crass commercialism. We're not Las Vegas, and we're not LA, and we're not even Orange County, thank goodness. So I cannot support even Commissioner Chavez's amended motion, and I'm more than happy to let the chips fall where they may if this gets appealed to the city council, because I am confident that they see things, I think, very similarly to the way that most of us see it. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Any other deliberation? I am trying to find a way forward in proving this, and I do think that Commissioner Chavez's amendments are in the right direction. Especially, it gives a direction to the city council what restriction would probably be best, instead of outright denying it. And so at this time, given my comments from the previous round, I'm going to move to add a condition that the cutoff time for any billboards under this ordinance will be at 10 p.m. Is there a second?
Chair requests for information from staff.
Yes.
Or clarification in regards to your motion.
Certainly, Commissioner Chavez, please state your question.
To our staff, it was mentioned in the staff report that the digital billboards will be technically exempt from the curfew of the 10 p.m. with the chair recommending the cutoff time. Does that, obviously that goes against what was in the report, but is there any ordinance that other than what we're discussing exempt them from being able to be cut off?
So right now, the ordinance as proposed does not have any cutoff times. So if there was a request to add those times, it would be subject to those requirements that were placed in the ordinance. And then if we were going to add those times, there would need to be the time in which they would come back on. So we'd need a period of time, essentially, as opposed. So if it was shut off at 10, what time they would come back on.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll leave it if there's any second. given that
Sure.
there's,
Sorry, Chair, just in regards to the cutoff time of 10, was there a time that they would come back on, like 6 a.m.? Like, what would be the period that they would be shut off for?
I think at this point it's going to be moot. I was just about to call that there was no second, so the motion will fall on the floor. Thank you for that, Mr. Pearson. Again, without second, the motion falls on the floor. We're back to the amended motion. What is the pleasure of the commission?
Chavez calls the question.
The question is called by Commissioner. Is there a second? I'll second. With a call to the previous question, just to remind the commission, we are voting on whether to go to a vote already and close debate. It needs a 2/3. Madam Secretary, can you call the roll, please?
It was moved by Chair Chavez.
Yes, Commissioner Chavez, seconded
I'm
by
sorry,
Chair
right.
Arvejo. No problem, Madam Secretary. We're voting on the motion on the previous question, closing debate.
Commissioner Chavez, and it was seconded by Vice Chair Stewart.
Chair Arvejo.
Chair Revel. Okay. Sorry, I was going back to the first one that you guys moved on.
So point of clarification.
Yes.
This is to close debate. This vote will be to close debate to then enter the vote, correct? It's not the way we would vote for if it was.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So just simply to close the debate to,
Correct.
okay, thank you.
Correct, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Chavez,
Aye.
Chair Arvejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Aye.
Commissioner Nash.
Again, a point of clarification from my old senior brain. This is simply to end debate.
That's correct, Commissioner Nash.
Aye.
Okay, and Vice Chair Stewart.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We will now move on to the amended motion. For the record, the motion is to adopt Resolution 2023-XX, recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration. 22-01, adopt Resolution 2023-XX, recommending that the City Council approve Planning and Zoning Permit number 20-580-06 with the following amendments: that a freeway-adjacent digital display billboard may only be erected on City of Oxnard-owned property or right-of-way in any non-residential zones located within 500 feet, not 400, of the freeway, and no more than 3, not 5, are allowed within the city. No freeway-adjacent digital display billboard may be placed at a distance of less than 250 feet, not 100 feet from the property line of any residentially zoned parcel. The maximum size of each freeway-adjacent digital display billboard face display area shall be 14 feet in height and 48 feet in width. Each billboard shall be separated from every billboard, not every other billboard, by at least 2,500 feet, not 2,000 feet, and that a freeway-adjacent digital display billboard may show a series of still images, each displayed for at least 12 seconds, not 8 seconds. Madam Secretary, can we please have the roll call?
Commissioner Chavez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Stewart,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
No?
Commissioner Nash,
No.
Chair Arvejo.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to agenda item.
Chair, sorry, Chair, if I can interrupt
Yes,
really
Mr.
quickly.
Pearson.
Staff would request a 5-minute break just for us to coordinate prior to moving on to the next item.
Thank you. Without objection, we'll go into a 5-minute recess. The chair will call the meeting back to order at 7:52 p.m. We'll move on to agenda item.
Chair, sorry to interrupt.
Yes, Mr. Pearson.
Chair, so on the previous item, we actually need to go back to that one. The recommendations do include recommending City Council adopt the mitigated negative declaration, and that wasn't part of the motion. So we just need to go back and clarify that that was part of the motion.
I'm sorry, Chair, I thought that I had included all of those.
I thought I restated it, but we will take a conservative view, and at this time, I am going to ask for a ratification of the motion to adopt resolution 2023-XX, recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration 22-01. I'll go through the whole thing just for cause, and adopt resolution 2023-XX, recommending that the City Council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-580-06 with the following amendments. Freeway adjacent digital display billboards may only be erected on City of Oxnard owned property or right-of-way in any non-residential zones located within 400 feet of the freeway, now 500 feet, and no more than 5, now 3, are allowed within the city. No freeway adjacent digital display billboard may be placed at a distance of less than 100 feet, now 250 feet, from the property line of any residentially zoned parcel. The maximum size of each freeway adjacent digital billboard billboard face display area shall be 14 feet in height and 48 feet in width. Each billboard shall be separated from every other billboard, now every billboard, by at least 2,000 feet, now 2,500 feet, and that a freeway adjacent digital display billboard may show a series of still images, each displayed for at least 8 seconds, now 12 seconds. Again, I am going to move that as a member of the, I'm going to move to ratify that we did do that right before recess. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chavez. Is there any deliberation on this motion? Commissioner Nash.
I will just reiterate my previous statement that I think the MND is a seriously flawed document. I have at least 21 policies that do not support its findings, so I will not be voting to approve the MND. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Nash. I'm going to direct Commission to have your comments just on the ratification, not on the merits of the motion underlying it. Thank you. Any other comments?
Chair, clarification.
Yes, Commissioner Chavez.
We're not voting on the motion as a whole. We're only voting on the M and D, correct?
Correct, but just out of just wholeness, I move to ratify just to cover everything just in case, which would include also the MND.
Okay, so I need some help from our legal counsel on this one. If by chance my vote is a no vote for the M&D, does that mean it's a no vote for the entire thing or just the M&D?
I will leave it to the chair for his ruling, but to the extent that you cannot support the M&D, it would be appropriate to have a vote first on the M&D and then on the.
So divide the question.
Correct.
Okay. So Chair, it would be my recommendation to divide the question, that we take item A first and then followed by item B with the amendments.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. At this time, if there's no objection, the commission will stand at ease for 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you for the brief pause. At this time, we are currently right now deliberating in regards to the ratification of the recommended motion by the staff with the amendments as approved. The question is if the M&D was also in there. At this time, I will look. If there's no objection, the chair will set aside and lay this ratification on the table. We'll pick it up if we need to, and we'll leave it up to the commission for further action.
Chair, point of order.
Commissioner Chavez.
I thought I called for division of the motion. Does that not require a second or for us to take action on that?
Currently, right now, we're in the ratification, so the division on the question would be on just the ratification. Is that your intent, Commissioner?
Well, I mean, I was under the impression that my original motion for this item included both items with the amendments until it was identified that it didn't include the M&D. So I was under the impression that right now our vote should be only on the M&D, not the actual ordinance with the amendments. I understand that you're trying to encompass it all so that we don't miss anything, but I believe the vote right now should only be on the MMD. But I look to staff if they have any additional information on that, but it's at the discretion of the chair. Thank you.
This is a little complicated. I would, based on the facts as are coming out, I would recommend that the Planning Commission take a confirming vote first as to the MND, which based upon discussion, it may not have 3 votes, and then second on the resolution approving the zone text amendment. That would clarify for the record what was and was not adopted. And of course, these are the recommendations to the council versus approval.
Thank you, Ms. Rosell. Given the comments by Commissioner Chavez and the recommendation by the council, if there is no objection, we will move into a vote separately on adopting the resolution recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration, and separately on the ordinance amendment with the amendments already discussed. Is there any objection to that order? With no objection, the motion on the table is to adopt the resolution 2023-XX recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration 22-01. Is there a second? And that's assuming that Commissioner, I am moving that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chavez. It's moved and seconded to adopt the resolution recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration. Is there any further deliberation on this? With no deliberation, Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Chair Rejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Chavez,
No.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Nope.
Commissioner Nash,
No.
Vice Chair Stewart.
Aye.
Motion does not pass.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Question to staff at this time, since the only concern was on Part A of Agenda Item G1, do we need to go again to Part B of the recommendation with the amendments?
No, that's not necessary at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Rozell. If there's no objection, we will move now to Agenda Item G2, project name River Park Boulevard Electronic Billboard Project, Planning and Zoning Permit, numbers 20-500-07, 20-670-06, and 20-630-02. A special use permit, development agreement, and specific plan amendment to allow for the installation and operation of an electronic billboard on an approximately quarter-acre undeveloped site located between the US 101 and River Park Boulevard, approximately 850 feet north of Vineyard Avenue in the northern portion of the city of Oxnard. I'm going to dispense with the rest of the description. The city staff, Joe Pearson II, Planning Environmental Services Manager. Is there any comment from staff at this time?
No. So Chair Rejo, staff does not have any additional comments. We are available for questions. The applicant team does have a presentation, so we would give them 10 minutes for their presentation once the commission is ready.
Thank you. If there's no objection, we're going to have the applicant present at this time. With no objection, the applicant, please, you have, I believe, 10 minutes.
Does this need to be turned on? No, it's good.
Production, can we please put up the presentation?
Great. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for your time tonight. My name's Lars Skogstad. I'm with Foster Interstate Media. I also represent Outfront Foster Interstate, which is a joint venture between Outfront, which is the largest outdoor company in the country, and Foster Interstate, a California-based outdoor advertising company specializing in municipal projects. Next slide. Or do I control that? Is that this? Our project includes 2 sites, which I think you are aware of. We are looking at site number 2, which is on the east side of 101 and just north of Vineyard. This is the close-up shot. It's a V-shaped sign, partially for the purpose of directing the light away from the residential behind it and towards the freeway. This is a rendering of that site on southbound 101. So the sign would be on the left-hand side. And this is a rendering of a northbound 101. The community benefits of the program, which we've been sort of alluding to during the discussion. The city of Oxnard will receive 1 space available spot on each digital face to promote city events and city messaging. The sign will be available for amber alerts, silver alerts, and emergency messaging. The Oxnard auto dealers and members of the Chamber of Commerce will receive a 10% discount to advertise on the sign. The city will receive the greater of a minimum annual guarantee of $150,000 or 30% of the revenue share, which is projected to be $560,000 per year. Lighting specifications. The signs have become pretty technically advanced. The lighting levels on the digital sign shall not exceed 0.3 foot candles above ambient light from a distance of 250 feet, as measured according to the standards of Outdoor Advertising Association of America. Brightness shall not exceed 300 nits, candela per square meter, from sunset to sunrise. At all other times, brightness will not exceed 7,500 nits. So you can see the difference between daylight and nighttime is a huge decrease in the level of the lighting. Illumination shall be directed such that the minimal light spill will occur on either side or top of the sign face. So the technology on the signs direct the signs, towards the freeway and not to the sides and not upward. A light sensor shall be installed with the sign to measure ambient light levels and to adjust the light intensity to respond to such conditions. The light sensor adjusts the sign's brightness in order to compete with the ambient light. The darker the surrounding ambient light, the less bright the sign is. The sign shall not display any moving, flashing, scrolling, fading, brightening, or animated text. There'll be stationary spots. Signage shall be controlled remotely and include maintenance software. As part of our application, we hired a third-party lighting expert to do a lighting study. Michael Schrupp from EXP. He will go over the results of the lighting study for this particular site.
Thank you, Lars. Yeah. Good evening. My name is Michael Schrupp. I'm a senior lighting director for EXP Global Services based in Glendale, California. We were hired to look at the brightness output of the sign and its effect on the community surrounding. In this case, we've done several digital studies using AGI 32 software. What you are seeing here in this display shows the general output of the sign as it pertains to the OAAA standard, which is the national standard for brightness, which calls for a no greater than 0.3 foot candle fall off at 250 feet. The proposed billboards at night, given the 300 nit maximum, fall far short of that. And then it shows in this what that boundary would look like and the general radius of the brightness as it falls on the freeway and surrounding area. This is a pseudo color map, just another way of representing the points of light in a color fashion. So if you look at the display on the top right corner and what those values display, the bright red area is that 0.3 cutoff, and then as it gets further away, you get into the yellow, green, and blue area. Where it starts to get into the blue area, you are below 1/10 of a foot candle, which diminishes almost beyond what you can really perceive on a surface. And then this rendering is showing a perspective from that billboard looking at the area of greatest concern, I think, to the council, which is that apartment complex adjacent to it. Of note are the dense trees that do block the majority of the view from any of the ambient light from the freeway and other objects that would take most of the light from the billboard on that off angle aimed towards that. And we did find a minimal amount of roughly 0.2 to 0.25 foot candles at the upper level of that one area of the apartment complex, quickly fading as it heads north and then south as the cutoff of the billboard directs it. And then this is the other view of it facing south into that vacant lot, where right now it's not really illuminating anything in that direction. There's a commercial building down at that farther end, but that was falling almost to zero at that point. So our conclusion on this one is that while there is some light that hits the apartment complex given the angle of the sign, my professional opinion is that it's a pretty minimal amount of light, especially given the amount of foliage that blocks most of it. I should say that all of these All the studies that we do are based on a worst-case scenario of no ambient light, since we can't generally measure how much light is there at any given time. So this would be as if there was no light in the area at all. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. At this time, members may ask questions of either the applicant and/or the staff.
Chair.
Commission. Yes, Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant team. It was mentioned that the city of Oxnard gets one spot for messaging or advertising.
Yeah.
Is that daily or monthly, weekly? How does that work out?
Yeah, it's typically a 4-week period increments is the typical duration of it. So it's monthly, basically.
Okay. And then this might be for the other gentleman in regards to the lighting. Any person that's watching this video or watching live right now, in layman's terms, explain just how bright at nighttime the light hitting the residential apartments could be. Is it the same brightness as a street light? Is it brighter, lesser?
Sure. So one of the things that we did actually do was we did a site survey where we did go out there with a light meter to survey the actual ambient light, given the street lights, and the building itself has a number of building mounted sconces and whatnot. The ambient light from poles generally falls often above a foot candle, given its proximity to the street. Is that River Park? And then obviously the building mounted sconces are, depending on where it is, near a door or window, are going to be, exceedingly bright, often 10, 15-foot candles. So we're talking about levels that are brighter than moonlight, but less than the ambient glow from streetlights.
Interesting. Thank you, gentlemen. For our city staff, based off of the ordinance that was adopted by the commission during the last item, this particular project complies with all of those amendments?
So Commissioner Chavez, based on the separation requirement from the residential, I believe this site is approximately 130 feet or so from the residential, which is across the street. So it would not comply with that, with the newly added 250-foot setback.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions?
Yes.
Vice Chair Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. When we talk about one spot, what is the total rotation time? So in other words, we have one spot, how long does it take it to rotate through that?
There are 8 total spots.
Okay.
And they rotate typically every 8 seconds. I know the amendment was for 12-second rotations. So,
Couple of
depending on-
minutes, worst case.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question is that other than a power outage, with the street lights, does that wash out the light that comes from the sign?
If I'm understanding the question, does the ambient light wash out the sign?
Right. In other words, the light coming off the sign is not as bright as the street light,
Oh.
so it gets washed out.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be imperceptible.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other questions of staff for the applicant at this time? Yes, Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Just a quick question for the apartment complexes that does have that impact on. Are those the Cabrillo Economic Development Corporation Affordable Housing apartments, or are those private apartments? Just wondering which ones they are physically.
Commissioner Lopez, I believe those are the
Affordable
Cabrillo
housing.
Economic Development Apartments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. No questions from me. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you. So we're also asking questions of staff at this time.
Staff or applicant, yes, Commissioner.
Pardon?
Yes, correct.
So, Mr. Rozell, I guess it's a time to talk about the development agreement. And I have to admit, I had no idea what I was reading. It seemed lengthy, complex, and not in the best interest of the city. So my question is, why would the city sign such a document as this? I'll rely on your expertise, but it just seems like it was written by people who are certainly smarter than those of us on the planning commission and probably those sitting on the city council. So we rely upon our legal counsel to walk us through this stuff and assure us that we're not signing for a pig in a poke, as they say.
I want to word this very carefully because I drafted it, so, and negotiated it, so I'm happy to explain any portions. Now, just to be clear, this was the deal points that were negotiated between city staff and Outfront Foster. So this was a deal point, and we negotiated. Then I drafted the document. I did work with the outside counsel for the billboard company, but this is a standard document that provides protection to the city. It lays out the amount of money we get. It lays out the uses that are allowed. It goes through all the contingencies, and because it's a contract and a lease, it provides I think kind of the mechanism for us to enforce those conditions. Now, clearly, to the extent, or actually, if I can back up, based on the fact that the Planning Commission recommended the zoning, which said that the site had to be at least 250 feet from residential, the Planning Commission cannot recommend the approval of the special use permit because it's not something which is allowed. It's up to you if you want to recommend to the council to approve the development agreement. That's somewhat inconsistent, but the action by the Planning Commission does preclude the approval of, or the recommended approval of this particular billboard. That's where we're at. But I'm more than happy to go over any provision of the development agreement that you have questions on, and I can walk you through it. We can talk about deal points, et cetera. But at this point in time, based on that zone text amendment recommendation, it's not something that you could recommend approval of.
And is that because of the expanded distance between residential?
That is correct. As Mr. Pearson indicated, the distance between the edge of the billboard and the residentially zoned property across the street from River Park Boulevard is 132 feet, which is clearly less than 250 feet. So it's not something, this site is not available for a billboard to locate now based upon your recommended zone text amendment.
Now, what is the term of this DA? Is it 30 years?
It's a 30-year term, correct?
So what happens at the end of 30 years?
Well, at some point in time before the end of the 30-year period, there would be a determination made both between the city and the operator if they wanted to continue or extend out the term of the development agreement and giving the right for this billboard to remain. So it's hard to predict the future, but there could either be an extension or it could be terminated and the billboard would be removed.
Okay, and who is responsible for the cost of removing the billboard?
It would be the responsibility of the operator to remove it consistent with the terms of it.
And is that a determination made by staff, city council, or the planning commission?
The provisions are in the development agreement itself. So, as we've talked about before, as we dealt with I believe it was the 4 apartments, where the planning commission made recommendations on the terms of the development agreement to the city council. You have the ability, if you go ahead and recommend council approval of this development agreement, to recommend any changes that you would support.
So, because of the approval of the amended ordinance, this project cannot go forward?
Well, the planning commission cannot recommend approval of this project. As has been discussed at length, the city council can consider your recommendation, either accept it or reject it. And then based upon that action, then they can make a determination if they were going to consider the approval of this development, actually all the items that are before you on this item, which includes the M&D, the development agreement, the amendment to the River Park specific plan, and the special use permit.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. And I just remembered a question I wanted to ask. If an amendment was made to postpone this item until after a decision by the City Council is made on the ordinance that was previously before us, what would be the length of time if that it would come back to the Planning Commission, if it would come back?
Under that proposed scenario, the city council action on the zoning ordinance would be final. So in essence, the planning commission tonight has made recommendations to modify the zone text amendment. It's of course a recommendation to the city council. The city council would then, assuming they accept your recommendations or reject them and adopt it in its original form, then they'd have an introduction, and then they'd have a adoption of it that goes into effect 30 days later. So it's depending when this would go to the city council, it'd be at least 45 days before it became effective. So it's a period of time.
Thank you, Ms. Rozelle. That's all the questions I had at this time. Are there any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Nash.
Just a comment, Chair, and that would be that when we have a motion to either approve or deny the recommendation, that we split the motion into each individual part. There's A, B, C, and D. So that would just be my recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Commissioner Chavez.
Mr. Rozelle, just clarifications. I understand based off of the action that the commission took on the first item that we wouldn't be able to move for an approval for this item. But just to clarify, if the commission was to table this item and the next item, pending the decision of the city council on our first action, would these items come back to us, or are they going to essentially go into effect of whatever decision that the council makes on our first action?
Commissioner Chavez, if you could clarify when you say these items, I want to make sure that I understand exactly what you're stating here. So you mean the development agreements?
Correct.
Under state law, the planning commission is obligated to make a recommendation on a development agreement. So until that happens, it doesn't go to council. Staff would request that the planning commission make their decisions tonight on all three items, so there can be a resolution of this matter. This process has taken a fairly long period of time. There was an extensive environmental analysis, and in some ways I think it'd be appropriate for us to reach a resolution, either approval or denial. And the applicant has also been in this process for a long time, and I think they would like that as well. So it's clearly your choice, but staff would request that the planning commission make its recommendations on all three items tonight if you're willing to accept that recommendation.
And I appreciate that recommendation, Mr. Rozelle, and I understand it's been a long process. If the city had did that in the past, we probably wouldn't have gotten in trouble like we did in the past years. This is obviously before many of our employees now, but I mean, going the extra step, a little bit longer just so that we cross all our T's and dot our I's, I think is absolutely important. But thank you for the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. Any other questions at this time? Seeing no further questions, we will now move on to public comment. Madam Secretary, is there any public comment?
Yes, we have one on the line raising their hand.
Okay, thank you. Let's unmute them. Last number, okay.
It's Mr. Darren Vida.
Okay. Sir, you have 3 minutes to speak on agenda item G2. Please begin.
Thank you. Thank you. I very much appreciate it. Again, this is Darren Beta, a River Park resident. Much appreciated for the additional setback in the proposed ordinance amendment. What was brought up by the community during the review process in Mr. Pearson's office was that I believe the commission should look at the impact to the vineyard overpass, which was not shown in the renderings, as well as the impact to River Park Boulevard, both areas of heavy traffic and frequent near misses and collisions. It seems they were almost intentionally not mentioned in the renderings, and the comments were provided dutifully by the community and then not responded to. So I don't believe the process has been followed to its honest conclusion. That concludes my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary, any other comments that popped up or any public commenters raised their hand?
No.
Thank you very much for that. I'll now close the hearing to public comment. Are there any closing remarks from staff?
No additional comments unless there's any questions from the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. We'll now move on to deliberation. What's the pleasure of the commission? Commissioner Chavez.
If there's no deliberating comments from the commission, I'll make a motion.
I'll pause for a second. Commissioner Nash, deliberation?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I have a few comments that I would like to direct towards this project. It's under the 3.0, the environmental checklist, I quote, "Northbound motorist background views would be minimally impacted because existing views include partial distant views of the coastal mountain range." My comment is that this viewshed is oftentimes spectacular, and the elimination of it would be a significant impact to the quality of life of both 101 commuters and Oxnard residents. Even a partial obstruction would be a diminishment. The project will remove 6 eucalyptus trees located along the north side of US 101, replaced with trees that would mature with a maximum height of 15 feet. My comment would be the visual and aesthetic impact of mature eucalyptus trees cannot be mitigated with 15-foot, in essence, shrubs. It's also a quote from the document, from the report. "However, as discussed above, the implementation of the proposed electronic billboard would result in less than significant impact to scenic vistas, scenic resources, and scenic highways. The project would result in a less than significant visual alteration of the existing visual characteristics as less than significant light and glare." My comment is that this is a deeply flawed and incorrect statement, especially when considered in a cumulative impact of multiple billboards along this 4-mile stretch. I also think that there is some, under 3.4 biological resources, that there is some movement of of endangered species from the Santa Clara River along the freeway, especially the freeway right away. I'm a little disappointed that this parcel of public land has not been proposed as either as a pocket park for El Rio West or as a stormwater detention basin, which I think is needed more than ever, both of those. Under the 3.15, transportation and circulation, I'm going to make the same comments I made earlier, especially in regards to the CHP comment letter. The mandatory 3.18, mandatory findings of significance. B and C have significant impacts which have not and cannot be mitigated, in my opinion. The City of Oxnard 2030 General Plan Consistency Analysis, the River Park Boulevard Electronic Billboard Project. My comment would be that the analysis and the rationalizations are provided, but in many cases flawed, in my opinion, according to my knowledge and experience. Section 4, based on the entire record before the Planning Commission and all written and oral evidence presented, including the special use permit, staff report, and all attachments thereto. The Planning Commission finds that 1, the proposed use is in conformance with the general plan and other adopted policies of the City of Oxnard. My comment is I disagree with the proposed use is in conformance with the general plan. 2, the nature, condition, and development of adjacent uses, buildings, and structures shall be considered, and no proposed special use permit shall be granted if the approval body finds such use will adversely affect or be materially detrimental to the adjacent uses, buildings, or structures, or to the public health, safety, or general welfare. My comment would be I find such use will adversely affect or be materially detrimental to the adjacent uses, buildings, or structures, or to the public health, safety, or general welfare. 7, we will not create a significant traffic or other public safety hazard. My comment would be I agree with the analysis provided. I agree with the comments provided by the CHP, and I believe that the proposed use will create a significant traffic or other public safety hazard. 8, will be appropriate size, scale, and design for the area in which it will be located. My comment is the proposed use is not of appropriate size, scale, and design for the area in which it will be located. 9, will be of high quality in appearance, design, and construction, and will be subject to conditions as appropriate, governing its design and operation. My comment, digital or otherwise, the proposed use is still a billboard and diminishes the quality of life and aesthetics for both the commuters on the 101 freeway and Oxnard residents. And if you look at the design drawings for the billboards, there's nothing special about them. Nothing to be proud of, certainly. Provide public benefit in the form of monetary payments to the city. And my earlier comment still stands. Quality of life cannot be replaced by $100,000, $150,000 contribution to the general fund, especially when we, at this time, we don't need the money, in my opinion. So those are my comments, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Any further deliberation from the commission? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
So certainly want to appreciate the time of the applicant and the staff that has brought us to this point here tonight. I think it's certainly just as a professional, I recognize and appreciate the time and the labor, the work, the good faith negotiation that happened over the years since this conversation first started with you all. I think that to my question earlier about the minimal lighting impact to the residents and it being identified to the apartments, or I should say to our low-income and farm-working residents and their families, that Mr. Pearson confirmed is a Cabrillo Economic Development Corporation low-income housing property, as well as the overwhelming majority opposition of the public comments that we received tonight in writing and throughout this process. I just kind of, again, see it hard to support this, especially, in light of also not being aligned or in conformance with the amended approved ordinance. And so finally, if we could just, for the production team, just pull up the applicant's presentation that we just saw. And I believe it was slide 2. If we could go to next slide. Sorry about that. Next one, where it was that one, and maybe the next one. That's what we are, in essence, voting on right now. And so I leave my fellow commissioners with this image on how it does change, again, just the natural, environment as we know it, and the clear skies that we're blessed to have here that aren't impacted by smog, as other parts of the state and the country experience. This is what we're voting on tonight. So thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Any further deliberation? I'll have a couple. Notwithstanding the recommendation that Mr. Rosell proffered, I do think it's in order to move to postpone this item until a meeting after a decision by the City Council is made on the ordinance and it's put into effect. Although, given the comments from my fellow commissioners, I don't know if even that motion to at least approve to be put on so that it could then be postponed or just move directly to postponement. So I'd just like to put that on the table that, given the comments, I'm inclined to vote against a motion to approve if my motion to postpone isn't approved. Thank you.
Chair,
Commissioner Chavez.
if there's no further deliberations, I'd like to make a motion.
Certainly.
I move for a motion is going to be for denial for all 4, A, B, C, and D, and direct staff to return back to on February 16th with a resolution of denial, reason being a negative impact on the quality of life and that it fails to meet the 250 feet distance from residential.
It has been moved to deny all 4 recommended all staff recommendations. I'll read them for the record. To deny Resolution 2023-XX recommending that the City Council adopt a mitigated negative declaration. To deny a Resolution 2023-XX recommending that the City Council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-670-06. To deny Resolution 2023-XX recommending City Council approve of planning and zoning permit number 20-630-02, and to deny the adoption of Resolution 2023-XX approving planning and zoning permit number 20-500-07, special use permit, with the reasons being that it will lead to a negative quality of life and fails to meet the 250-foot buffer from the residential zone. Before I ask for a second, I'd like to ask Commissioner Chavez if I stated that motion correctly.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second on that motion?
Second from Commissioner Nash.
Thank you. For the second, Commissioner Nash, is there any further deliberation on the motion as presented to us?
Chair.
Commissioner Chavez.
So I wanted to be perfectly clear. It is not anything personal. I understand the hard work that our staff and the applicant team has put into this. Unfortunately, when we have, those images of what could be and how it could have a negative impact on the quality of life of our residents, it's important to me to stand up for them in that instance. I appreciate the information as far as the lighting, how it's more, and correct me if I'm wrong, more than moonlight, but less than street lights, which is simple, it's easy, everyone can recognize that. I just hope if there's another proposal that it's in a different location where it's not so close to residentials. I understand the reasoning for this particular area because it's a freeway off-ramp, on-ramp. It's ideal because it has so much traffic going through the area. But at the same time, we have to be respectful to our community and really look at the type of message we're trying to send to this particular community. Those would be my comments and requesting a yes vote for my motion of denial. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. Any other deliberation? Commissioner Nash, your speaker is open? Okay. No.
Chair Chavez, or not Chair, sorry.
No problem. Mr. Pearson.
Chair Orejo, staff is, one change that staff requests is instead of the 16th is just to come back at the next meeting of, I believe it's February 2nd. Yeah, February 2nd, if that's acceptable to the commission.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I gave you guys enough time. I felt February 2nd was too close, but if you guys are good for that, then I'm okay with amending my motion from February 16th to February 2nd.
If there's no objection, the motion will be amended to come back to us on February 2nd. No objection, it is amended to February 2nd. Again, is there any further deliberation? Seeing no further deliberation, Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Chavez?
Aye.
Commissioner Nash?
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stewart?
Aye.
Chair Arrejo?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item G3, Ventura Road Electronic Billboard Project, Planning and Zoning Permit numbers 20-500-06, 20-670-05, and 21-660-03. A special use permit, development agreement, and street vacation to allow for the installation and operation of an electronic billboard on an approximately 1,000 square foot undeveloped site located on the north side of the US 101 and immediately west of Ventura Road in the northern portion of the city of Oxnard. I'll dispense with the rest of the description. Does staff want to provide a summary or additional analysis at this time?
So Chair Orejo, staff has no additional comments at this time, but again, the applicant does have a presentation.
Right.
So if you would give them another 10 minutes to go through their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. If there's no objection from the commission, we'll have the applicant present at this time. You'll have 10 minutes, and time will begin when you start. Thank you.
Great, thank you. A lot of this information will be similar to the last one. I've introduced myself and the company. This is Site 1. It is on the edge of the city limits on Ventura, on the east side of Highway 101. That's a overview. This one's what we call a back-to-back sign because the freeway is pretty straight in this area. This is a rendering on the southbound of 101 and a rendering on northbound. Again, the community benefits are exactly the same as Site 2, with the city receiving one space available spot on each digital face. To promote city events and messaging, the sign will be available for amber alerts, silver alerts, and emergency messaging. The Oxnard auto dealers and members of Chamber of Commerce will receive a 10% discount. And again, the dollar values are the same, with the MAG being $150,000 and 30% of the revenue estimated about $560,000 per year to the city. Also, all the lighting specifications are identical to the other site. The only difference on this one is the lighting study is specific to the site, and Michael can talk about those details.
Hello again. So, yeah, this one was slightly different in that there was extra attention paid to the river basin and the light that would spill into that adjacent area. In this case, we did a couple different digital renderings looking at the sign placement, how to best mitigate that spillage. And then to support the CEQA report, we did two separate site surveys taking light reading measurements because located on that side of the freeway are a series of poles, acorn-style poles, omnidirectional, spilling not only onto the pedestrian walkway adjacent to the freeway, but actually down into the basement. So we wanted to see into the basin. So we wanted to see how much of that light was actually hitting into the basin now versus how much would be added by the signage. So here again is that pseudo color view. What you can sort of see on that north side, the basin actually does slope down primarily where the majority of the light is hitting into the basin. The dense foliage and the area that would most likely be refuge for animals and breeding and whatnot actually doesn't occur until well after that on the page where you start to see the dark blue areas because it is considerably lower in that area. So again, the rendering sort of looking at either direction of the impact directly onto the freeway and the area below on Ventura Road. So what we found from both of these studies, the poles that currently exist did produce a significant amount of light, equal to, if not more in some cases, than the billboard would produce. Obviously, the billboard was producing more on that immediate slope, but as it reached the plateau of the basin, the light level from it swapped. The light levels from the sign were greatly diminished versus what was coming directly down from those poles. So with that, our conclusion was that the sign really wasn't contributing much of anything to the river basin that we saw as habitable. And I should qualify the reasoning behind that statement was as we were there, it was clear that there's a maintenance road that the city or county maintains and had just been cleared, so that had all been chopped back. And that is where the primary brightest point of the light was hitting. The other direction, the light was focused primarily on the ramp leading up to the pedestrian walkway of the freeway and the freeway itself. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. At this time, members may ask questions of the applicant and staff. Is there any questions at this time? Vice Chair Stewart.
Yes, isn't there a senior living complex right there or in that general area? And does that light reflect on that? I'm trying to think of right there on that side, there's, in that basin, there's a panda, and then there's also a senior living complex there. Am I hitting it wrong?
Yes. So, Commissioner Stewart, yes, on the other side of Ventura Road, there's a vacant property, which is the location of the approved 4 apartments project. And then on the other side of that is the Oakmont senior facility.
Okay.
It's currently a vacant lot, but the planning commission approved, I think, the summer earlier this year, the development, or new development in that empty lot right now. So there will be, but it's not there now.
Yes.
We actually did note that, that there was a building being constructed there, and it was put into one of our renderings. I believe it fell outside of the 45-degree angle of the sign at that point. It's further up the street.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stewart. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair. All of my previous comments also apply to this project. Under Project Analysis D in the city's bicycle and pedestrian master plan, this location is identified as a possible location for the Santa Clara River multi-purpose path. And mention was made that, well, my question is, during an encroachment episode, I guess, to work on the sign, would the entire multi-purpose path be blocked? And I know it's kind of a hypothetical because there is no multi-purpose path.
Sorry, Commissioner Nash, just to clarify, you're asking if when the sign is there, it would be blocked, or if there was...
If the sign is there, mention was made of potential encroachment on the path, and I'm curious as to whether that would preclude anybody from getting onto the path if it ever gets built.
So no, the sign itself would still provide sufficient space for the path. At this point in time, there's not an entrance to the path at that location. Essentially, it would just be the 10 to 12 foot wide path that would run underneath the freeway. So it wouldn't block anyone's access to get to the pathway.
Okay, I was a little unclear on the letter from the County of Ventura Watershed Protection District as to any potential impacts on the, what is the SCR1 levy system. It is in the process of being funded and designed and approved. So the sign seems awfully close to that. I'm just curious as to what the city got from their letter, because I was unclear on where they stood on it.
So Commissioner Nash, they did provide a comment letter. In their comment letter, they seem to think that the sign was in the river. The sign is outside the river and will not require impacts to the levee itself. There's actually a wall that runs along that property, and then there's the levee, and then there's the river. However, there's also a condition as well that does require that during the construction of the sign that there's confirmation that it will not adversely affect the levee as well. But at this point in time, the proposed construction would not impact the levee.
There was also a comment letter from the State of California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they had concerns about direct and indirect impacts on the riparian ecosystem, potential impact to California species of special concern, potential impact to non-game mammals and wildlife, potential impacts to the bank and levee system, and I know that those were addressed in the report, but the concerns still remain. So I guess that was more of a comment than a question. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Any other questions at this time? Seeing no further question, Mr. Pearson. Oh, okay, I saw your speaker on. With no further questions, Madam Secretary, is there any public comment?
No.
Sorry, Chair Chair Rejo. I also did want to note that, as with the previous sign, with the amendments to the prior ordinance, increasing the distance to 250 feet, that this sign would also be within 250 feet of the proposed 4 apartments project in that property, which does at this time allow for residential. So as with the previous sign, this one would also not be permissible under the amended ordinance.
Acknowledged. Thank you for that information, Mr. Pearson. Given that there's no public comment, I will be closing the hearing to public comment. Are there any closing remarks from staff other than what you just mentioned?
Chair Rejo, the only other comment, I guess, to follow up on Nasha's comment, if he would like to ask any further questions, we do have the biologist with ESA who did work with Michael in preparing the responses to the letter from the California Fish and Wildlife. So if there were additional comments or questions, they are available. But other than that, no additional comments at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Now we'll move on to deliberation. Is there any deliberation from the commission? Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification from our staff. We know for a fact it's 250 feet from where the proposed digital sign and the apartment.
So yes, it's approximately 60 feet from the edge of the sign to the property that the 4 project would be developed on. So yes, at this time, it would be within the 250-foot radius.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it's kind of one of those double-edged swords. You want to do something good, but then now it kind of messes up everything else. This particular one I would be okay with, only because it is on the edge of the city and it's not such a huge impact. But because of the increase of the buffer zone between residentials and the proposed sign, it kind of messes it up. That's why I say it's a double-edged sword. And we can't pick and choose which locations actually get the distance and which ones don't. So, I mean, in my opinion, this would have been the perfect location because, one, this area is still going under development. They're still supposed to be redoing, I think the off-ramp's supposed to be shifting or being reconstructed. I think we had that come before us a while back. So there's rooms for improvement in that area. And in my opinion, I would have appreciated the additional lighting in that area. It's not like a huge lighting increase, but additional lighting nonetheless, because the area is dark, and it would have been a huge benefit. So those are my comments. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. Any other deliberation? Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair. Again, all of my previous comments apply. I will say that this proposed sign would be an absolutely horrific greeting to people entering our city, crossing the Santa Clara River Bridge. They're looking at the natural riparian ecosystem of the Santa Clara River. They're looking at the coastal mountain range. And here's the sign, advertising TV. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. It's not needed. It's aesthetically repulsive. And those are those are certainly my opinions. But there is simply no way that the negative impacts can be mitigated as far as aesthetics and scenic resources go. So I will certainly not vote to approve this sign, the special use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Also want to reiterate my previous comments, just simply in acknowledging the time, the work, and the effort over the years by both the applicant and city staff on this item as well. And just simply point out to my fellow commissioners that intersection and that overpass of Ventura Road, is common for serious, severe, and deadly traffic accidents, more due to speed and the nature of the road. I would say, possibly just negligence and reckless driving by folks as they travel through and under that underpass there on Ventura Road into and towards River Park, and just hence the accidents, right? And I've always tried to center the public safety, and I'd hate for just any indirect effects or distractions by the signs, not necessarily the lighting, but the signs being a distraction to possibly, affect the serious, severe, and deadly traffic accidents that are already prone to happen there. And so, just aligned with what I've said before, also just in a very difficult position to not support the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Any other further deliberation? I'll start my deliberation with a question, a quick one, because it will inform the rest of my comments. Given if the city council happened to approve the ordinance as approved by us, this permit wouldn't, and everything here wouldn't be in accordance with that. However, can we also assume that the city council would reject all of our amendments? And so if they happen to do that and go and approve the underlying ordinance, which was originally presented to us, we could approve this item because we don't know what the city council is going to do. And so I just wanted to know, even though it's not logical in regards to our previous, we don't know what city council is going to do. So we should just approve it, just separated from whatever is gonna happen with the ordinance. I can make it a simple question, but
No, I understand your question. The issue we have, as we discussed earlier, is that the Planning Commission's recommended modifications to the zone text amendment placed a 250-foot buffer between residentially zoned property and the location of the sign. So based upon that recommendation vote by a majority of the Planning Commission, the commission does not have the ability to approve these items. What you could do, if desired, and this is just merely one possibility, is that you can go ahead and deny these items, but also indicate that if the city council chooses not to accept your proposed changes to the zone text amendment, that you would be supportive of the billboards at the site. Once again, that's just one option, because Chair Arroyo, that's what I think I hear you say.
Thank you, Ms. Roselle, for that option. The one that was percolating in my mind was just to postpone this item until the decision of the city council, the ordinance became effective, and then we could make our decision based on whatever the ordinance was finalized as. Is that also an option? Although I guess that's an extra step. So you want to try to shorten the process by not having it come to us and having us approve it on the off chance that the city council removes the conflicting clauses that would prevent us from adopting this resolution, correct?
Not exactly. The Planning Commission cannot recommend approval of this item based upon your recommendations on the zone text amendment, but you could have language in kind of the motions that are made that indicates that while you're recommending denial of the four items, to the extent that the city council does not accept your recommendation as it relates to the 250-foot distance between residentially zoned property and the billboard, that the planning commission would recommend that the city council approve the billboards at this location. So you still need to deny it, but you can add language which staff could then add to the city council staff report that indicates that there was denial based upon the recommended zone text amendment, but if that is not accepted, that the planning commission was supportive of this item, if that's the case. That's just one scenario.
Thank you, Ms. Roselle. I'll probably make a motion to that effect pending further deliberation from the commission. Thank you. That's all for my deliberation. Is there any further deliberation from the commission? What is the pleasure of the commission? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
1 second. So I'd like to move that we deny the resolution or the recommended action by staff.
It has been moved to deny the recommended action of staff. I'll read it for the record that we adopt resolution 2023-XX recommending that the City Council deny a mitigated negative declaration, adopt resolution 2023-XX recommending that the City Council deny planning and zoning permit number 20-670-05, adopt resolution 2023-XX affirming that the City of Oxnard's proposed vacation of real property consisting of an approximately 1,000 square foot, denying that the City of Oxnard's proposed vacation of real property consisting of an approximately 1,000 square foot undeveloped site located on the north side of the US 101 and immediately west of Ventura Road in the northern portion of the City of Oxnard is in conformance with the City of Oxnard 2030 General Plan and recommending that the City Council not proceed with the vacation subject to certain findings and adopt resolution 2023-XX denying planning and zoning permit number 20-500-06 subject to certain findings and conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Nash. Is there any deliberation on this motion as amended to us? Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say real quick is that although by default we have to deny it, there was one comment that was made by a commissioner saying that it could have been distracting for the motorists in the area. I mean, yes, Ventura Road, speeds go high, people go underneath the bridge. I don't see it as a distraction because the sign is up above. I mean, the most that is going to happen is the lighting. Again, by default, we have to deny it, but I would be supportive of language that says that if the council does, disregard our recommendation for an ordinance to support this location for the signage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. Any further deliberation? At this time, I'm going to move to amend the motion before us to include language that if the City Council rejects or amends the clause in regards to the 250-foot residence to a number below allowing for the adoption or approval of all parts of the staff recommendation. That's my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Vice Chair Stewart. Is there any deliberation on the amendment to the motion? I'll speak on the amendment that given the comments by staff, I believe that if the buffer with the residents happen to be dropped, I would be in support of all parts of the recommendation of this planning commission. Barring that, I will move for approval of the underlying motion. Is there any further deliberation on the amendment to the motion? Seeing no,
Chair, sorry. Chair,
yes, Mr. Person.
just to clarify, similar to the last item, the motion would be to come back again with the resolutions of denial at the February 2nd meeting.
Thank you. Without objection, that will be added upon with the motion. With no objection, that's added. Is there any deliberation on the amendment to the motion? Seeing no further deliberation, Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call on the amendment?
Chair Orejo,
Aye.
Vice Chair Stewart,
Aye.
Commissioner Chavez,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Nope.
Commissioner Nash.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The motion before us as amended is to, for the record, to adopt a resolution 2023-XX recommending that the City Council deny a mitigated negative declaration, adopt resolution recommending that the City Council deny planning and zoning permit number 20-670-05, adopt the resolution denying that the City of Oxnard's proposed vacation of real property consisting of an approximately 1,000 square foot undeveloped site located on the north side of the US 101 and immediately west of Ventura Road in the northern portion of the City of Oxnard is in conformance with the City of Oxnard 2030 General Plan, and recommending that the City Council not proceed with the vacation subject to certain findings, and adopt a resolution denying planning and zoning permit number 20-500-06. In addition to the clause that if the City Council rejects or amends the foot buffer to a level below where the project would be in conformance with the ordinance, that it would be approved. Is there any further deliberation on the motion as amended? With no further deliberation, Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call on the motion as amended?
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Nope.
Commissioner Nash,
No.
Commissioner Chavez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Stewart,
Aye.
Chair Orejo.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your time, applicants, on all of that. We appreciate your diligence and, of course, the staff in regards to that. Moving on to Section H, study sessions and reports. There is nothing listed. And going on to Section I, Planning Commission business. Is there any business from the Planning Commission? Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you. I just want to say real quick, welcome back to Commissioner Stewart to the commission. Congratulations on being selected vice chair. It's first day on the job. Congratulations. And congratulations to our chair, Rejo. I'll also just say that it's been a privilege and an honor to be able to serve the past 2 years as the chair. And I look forward to continuing our work to support our community and building a future that we can all be proud of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for those comments. Commissioner Chavez. Any others? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Gonna pretty much echo Commissioner Chavez's remarks. Thank you to him for serving as an exceptional chair for the last 2 years. Very much appreciated you helping us navigate at times very contentious items in a very respectful, collegial manner. And so it's recognized and much appreciated. Thank you. And to our new chair, Orejo, and our vice chair, Stewart, thank you both for your time and your willingness to serve in these positions in leading our planning commission forward. To Commissioner Stewart, welcome back as a seasoned veteran. I think we're nearing on maybe 10 years of knowing each other, and so it is an absolute pleasure and a joy to be able to finally work with you once again on the planning commission. So welcome back, and thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Any other comments? I would just like to use this time to truly thank past Chair Chavez for his leadership of the commission. I've looked up to him so many times in regards to how best to do the position of that one time that I had to chair. I've said before, and I'll say again, that I've served under a lot of chairs, both governmental, political, and nonprofit, and he is absolutely in the top 5% of the chairs. You know, I could say that I know a little bit more than average in regards to Robert's rules, but it's definitely a different animal when you're thinking on your feet. I appreciate you all giving me the option to stand at ease and give myself time to prepare and make a couple mistakes already. And so, yes, I echo the comments already made about past Chair Chavez, and I'm actually planning to, setting a schedule to look up past meetings just to see how I can better myself. I'm pretty sure there's a list full that I could already improve on this meeting. And at this time, I want to just say personally that, you know, a lot of us have different stories of how we got to Oxnard. Mine began 50 years ago when my dad decided to come here, stay here after his active duty service. He worked for Support Wainami, but decided to be in Oxnard. When my mom immigrated here, they had the option to go in LA County, but they decided to stay in Oxnard. When we were looking for a different home, we were looking at Camarillo, Ventura, and Port Wainami, and we moved to the East Village. And even in my way through LA County in the Midwest, I somehow find my way back to Oxnard, where I grew up most of my life. And it is an absolute pleasure. As someone also saying, it's still a surprise. This is from someone who was held back in kindergarten because I was too shy to talk to anyone. And so even my family members can't believe that I'm doing something where I have to talk with other people. So I appreciate everyone being so nice as possible, that we have frank and honest discussion, and that we make decisions in the best interest of not only of our present, but of our future and future Oxnardians. Thank you very much. If there's no further business, I'm gonna go to the next section, community development staff updates. Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Chair Rejo, and nothing much to add. Again, congratulations to our new chair and new vice chair and new commissioner. And again, thank you to Chavez for guiding us over the last few years. In terms of items upcoming for the February 2nd meeting, we do have one new item, as well as, I guess now it would be 3 continuing items coming before the commission. So that's all that we have for the next meeting coming up. And with that, that's all that I have.
Thank you. And Ms. Roselle? Oh, and we'll go, Ms. Roselle, please.
Nothing to add at this point, but actually first I want to congratulate Chair Arwejo and Vice Chair Stewart on being elected, and former Chair Chavez. We appreciated your 2 years as chair, and look forward to this commission working on a lot of interesting topics in the year ahead.
Thank you. Question, Commissioner Chavez?
Thank you. I wanted to see if it was possible. I know we've already went through the process for our bylaws. They're still pending about the approval, but I wanted to see if it was possible to bring them back at a future meeting. There was an amendment that I wanted to do to them, but again, they're technically not approved, so I don't know if you can amend something that's not approved yet.
Well, I wanted to give a quick update. We did get a ruling from the appellate court today on Measure M and N. The court upheld Measure M as valid. Somewhat of a surprise, but the court has ruled. So the council will be considering the next course of action, whether to appeal this or not, on February 7th. So it would be my recommendation that we wait until the council makes their determination. If they choose not to appeal, then Measure M will be the final law of the land, and it would be appropriate to adopt the bylaws and go forward with that. But if you would give us just a little more time, given that court decision which came out this afternoon.
I appreciate that update. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. Any questions of staff? Seeing no questions, we'll go on to adjournment, and if there's no objection to adjournment, we are adjourned until our next meeting. I believe it was February 2. Thank you very much. Have a good night, stay safe, and till next time.